On Venus, there is an optical phenomenon similar to a rainbow, but it's called a glory. Instead of raindrops, tiny particles of sulfuric acid in the planet's dense atmosphere create it. As a result, bright-colored circles appear in the sky, resembling a glowing halo. Imagine not the familiar arc above the rain, but a true cosmic aura. This shows that even on other planets, nature puts on its own light and color shows, albeit with different ingredients. And even though Venus is distant and harsh, it can also be beautiful. Who would have thought that the hockey mask was invented by a Japanese man? In 1936, goalie Teiji Honma took to the ice in an unusual piece of equipment, a face mask resembling a samurai helmet. At the time, his idea seemed strange, but it later became the foundation for modern protective gear in hockey. Today, it's hard to imagine a goalie without a mask, but it was once considered unnecessary. Honma was a pioneer who blended the traditions of his culture with the sport. Thanks to him, hockey gained an item that has saved the health of thousands of players around the world. Did you know that the Pentagon cannot account for half of its budget? The US Department of Defense is regularly audited, and each time it turns out that a huge portion of its expenses remains unverified. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. The reasons include the complexity of the system, bureaucracy, and sometimes plain negligence. But for taxpayers, it sounds absurd. The world's largest military spends money but can't accurately explain where it goes. This fact has become a source of numerous conspiracy theories and distrust in the government. In any case, it's a striking example of how even a massive organization can get lost in its own accounts. In Venice, there is an unusual museum that showcases items recovered from the bottom of the canals. You can see coins, ancient tools, jewelry, and even musical instruments that have been submerged for centuries. Each exhibit is a piece of history, accidentally lost and later found. Imagine walking through the city, and somewhere beneath your feet in the mud lies a lost ring or a merchant's wallet, only to be unearthed by archaeologists centuries later. This museum brings the past to life, revealing not the grand Venice but its everyday life. It serves as a reminder that every forgotten object could one day become part of a larger story. Strange but true, there is a philosophy that rejects logic. It's called anti-intellectualism. Its essence is that intuition and action are more important than reasoning. Proponents believe that conclusions are too slow and unreliable, while traditions and experience are more valuable than any arguments. Essentially, it's a philosophy of do rather than think. This approach may seem wild to a rational person, but it has genuinely existed and found followers. Throughout history, there have always been those who trusted their hearts more than their minds. Thus, even in philosophy, there are teachings that consciously reject the very foundation of philosophy: reasoning. The word laser seems familiar and simple, but in reality, it's an acronym. It stands for Light Amplification by Stimulated Emission of Radiation. It sounds complicated, but the essence is straightforward. The technology allows energy to be directed into a powerful beam. Lasers are now used in medicine, science, industry, and even in the entertainment industry. It's amusing that a word we say every day hides a whole technical definition within it. It's as if a long name is concealed behind a short sign, and the term itself has become a symbol of progress, turning into part of everyday speech. Glass seems like something familiar to us. Windows, bottles, phone screens. But if you think about it, it's a true marvel of nature and human ingenuity. It all starts with ordinary sand, which is heated to temperatures over 1,400 degrees. It melts and transforms into a transparent material. This process has been known since the time of ancient Egypt, and since then it has hardly changed, only become more precise. Consider how amazing it is. What crunches under our feet on the beach can, after being subjected to fire, become a transparent window through which we view the world. Ordinary sand has the power to reshape civilization. Yes, there are sharks that can walk. These are small epaulette sharks that live on coral reefs. They use their fins like legs, moving them to shuffle along the seafloor. This ability helps them search for food in places where swimming is difficult, like shallow lagoons. It looks unusual, as if a little shark decided to try on a lizard's outfit. Scientists believe this is an example of unique adaptation. Nature has seemingly given this predator new tools for survival. The walking shark is yet another reminder that the ocean holds countless wonders we are not even aware of. Many people believe that lightning never strikes the same place twice, but that's a myth. In reality, for example, the Empire State Building in New York gets hit by lightning about 100 times a year. Tall buildings and structures seem to attract electricity, and their tops are specially equipped with lightning rods to prevent damage from strikes. So, lightning doesn't avoid old spots. In fact, it loves to return to them again and again. So if you find yourself near a skyscraper during a storm, know that it's one of the most common places for lightning to meet the ground. Nature once again proves that it doesn't adhere to pretty sayings. The space menu has long resembled a home-cooked one, featuring borscht and cutlets instead of just tubes. Today, meals in orbit are not much different from those on Earth. Astronauts eat borscht, cutlets, and porridge, all in special packaging. Soups are heated and consumed through a straw, while solid dishes are eaten with a spoon. The main difference is that food can float away, so everything is secured with Velcro and served carefully. Many are surprised to find that lunch in space is not a futuristic powder, but rather a familiar home menu. This way, an astronaut can feel almost at home during their meal. The carnivorous plant Venus flytrap can literally count. When an insect touches its sensitive hairs, the trap doesn't close immediately. The plant waits for a second touch to ensure it's not just a random raindrop or a speck of dust. If the touch is repeated, the lobes snap shut. Scientists have found that the flytrap keeps an internal count, and a specific number of stimuli is also needed for digestion. This means the plant has a primitive memory and a decision-making system. This makes it resemble a creature with a brain, even though it doesn't have one. In the Emirates, skyscrapers are built not only for beauty but also for practical purposes. In the heat, height helps cool the buildings. At higher levels, the temperature is lower, and the shade from the towers covers parts of the streets. Thus, architecture becomes a way to combat the climate. Imagine a city where towers are not just decorations but a refuge from the scorching sun. Moreover, tall buildings save land, freeing up space for parks and roads. As a result, modern skyscrapers are not a whim, but a smart solution that transforms the desert into a comfortable and cool metropolis. Want to know the secret of sleep? It turns out that the amount of sleep needed varies by age. Babies require about 10 to 11 hours, teenagers need 9 to 10, adults get by with 7 to 8, and older adults may manage with just 6. Our bodies seem to adjust their internal clocks throughout life. Imagine a child is fussy without sleep, a teenager sleeps in until noon, an adult enjoys rare weekends with long sleep, and an elderly person rises cheerfully at dawn. Sleep is universal fuel for the brain, but each age group has its own refueling norm. It may seem that sports should unite people, but one day a football field became the spark for war. It sounds absurd, but in 1969, football matches were the last straw in the conflict between Honduras and El Salvador. The teams faced off on the field, but underlying their game were much sharper issues: overpopulation, land disputes, and social tension. The matches added fuel to the fire, leading to a war that would later be called the Football War. It lasted only a few days but claimed thousands of lives. The irony is that a sport meant for unity and joy unexpectedly became the trigger for a real tragedy. Digital clocks are much more accurate than mechanical ones. Electronic devices use the vibrations of a quartz crystal, which functions almost like a perfectly precise metronome. Mechanical clocks, on the other hand, rely on springs and gears, making them more prone to wear and inaccuracies. The difference can be minutes over a month, while digital clocks may only lose a few seconds. Imagine a race. One runner stays perfectly on track, while the other constantly veers off slightly. That's how it is with clocks. Yet the irony is that mechanical watches often become symbols of luxury and style. In the Chinese province of Yunnan, there is a place that resembles a set from a fantasy film more than reality. It is the Stone Forest, massive limestone pillars that are over 270 million years old. Wind and rain have sculpted the stone into whimsical shapes resembling everything from castle towers to animal figures. Locals believe that spirits of nature inhabit this forest, surrounding it with legends. Tourists who find themselves here feel as if they have entered another world, where trees have been replaced by stone spires reaching into the sky. This place astonishes with its scale and mystery, reminding us that even rocks can be living pages of Earth's history. A herd of goats is referred to in an unusual way: nannies and billies. The females are called nannies, while the males are billies. This amusing terminology highlights their personalities. The goat always appears caring yet stubborn, while the buck is independent and proud. Imagine a farm where the shepherd calls not just a herd, but a team of nannies and billies. It adds a touch of humor to simple rural life. Such names show that people have always tried to see in animals not just food or assistance, but also their unique characters. In English, there is a record-breaking word, set. It has over 400 meanings. It all depends on the context. You can set the table, set the alarm, or set a record. The same short word can represent an action, a state, or an object. Imagine if we had a word that could mean book, to go, and bright. English is incredibly flexible in this regard, and such words make it rich and vibrant. For language learners, set is a real puzzle that requires a dictionary to navigate. Ordinary clay unexpectedly gave the world the image of a piggy bank. In fact, the term piggy bank has nothing to do with animals. In Old English, there was a word pig, which referred to red clay. This clay was used to make pots and jars for storing coins. Over time, the banks themselves became associated with this word. However, people later began to interpret pig as pig. Thus, the idea of making banks in the shape of piglets was born. This resulted in a remarkable example of how a linguistic mix-up created an iconic symbol of children's savings. Iceland is one of the few places on Earth without mosquitoes. The climate here is such that insects can't complete their life cycle. It's too cold in winter and the temperature changes too rapidly in summer. For tourists, it's a paradise. You can stroll through forests and by lakes without the annoying buzzing. The locals joke that this is one of their country's main advantages. Imagine, summer, a campfire, a tent, and not a single mosquito bite. For us, it sounds like a dream, but for Icelanders, it's just a way of life. Octopuses are remarkable creatures not only for their tentacles and intelligence, but also for how they care for their offspring. The female lays thousands of tiny eggs and then guards them for weeks, refusing to eat. All her energy goes into ensuring the hatchlings emerge safely. When this happens, the mother often dies from exhaustion. Such self-sacrifice is astonishing. She literally gives her life for the future generation. In the animal kingdom, such devotion is rare. So, when observing an octopus, it's worth remembering that behind its cold exterior lies one of the most touching displays of maternal instinct. You won't believe it, but the sugar industry has been hiding the truth for decades. In the mid-20th century, sugar producers funded research that shifted the blame for heart disease onto fats and cholesterol. Scientists published articles that downplayed the dangers of sugar, redirecting attention to dangerous fats. As a result, entire generations believed that sweets were relatively safe, while the real threat was butter and meat. It was only later revealed that excess sugar is directly linked to obesity and diseases. This is one example of how business can rewrite science for its own benefit. You've probably seen a flamingo or a duck standing on one leg. This isn't acrobatics. It's a way to conserve heat. Birds lose a lot of energy through their legs, and by tucking one leg under their feathers, they reduce heat loss by almost half. It would seem wild for us. Try standing like that for even 10 minutes. But flamingos can even sleep while balancing on one leg, like yogis in nature. Scientists call it unilateral resting, but essentially it's just a comfortable habit. Birds know the secret to comfort better than we do. A regular apple is made up of 90% water. That's why it's so juicy and refreshing. When you bite into an apple, it's like drinking a mini glass of pure water with vitamins. It's no wonder apples are a popular snack for travel. They're light, nutritious, and quench your thirst. Interestingly, thanks to their high water content, apples can be stored for a long time without losing freshness. They are like a natural bottle of drink, just in the form of a fruit. And perhaps one of the most convenient snacks created by nature. Today, the Earth's population has surpassed 8 billion people. Imagine, that's 8 billion stories, voices, smiles, and destinies. For comparison, in just the last 100 years, we've quadrupled in number. Once only a few million people lived on the planet, and now that many can reside in a single large city. This figure prompts us to think about the future. Will resources be sufficient? Will we learn to care for the planet? Yet at the same time, 8 billion represents 8 billion opportunities, ideas, and discoveries that could change the world. If Saturn surprises with diamond rain, then the phenomenon on Neptune is even more impressive. Under pressure and at immense temperatures, methane in the planet's atmosphere turns into diamond crystals that fall like raindrops. Imagine precious stones gathering in the sky instead of clouds. Of course, at depth, they break down into other forms of carbon, but the process itself is astonishing. A world where diamonds rain from the sky seems like a fairy tale, yet it truly exists. However, it's unlikely that humans will ever reach it. Conditions are just too extreme. but the thought of such natural luxury is captivating. Today, it's hard to imagine a computer without microchips, but there was a time when memory was made quite differently. In the mid-20th century, data was stored in tiny magnetic rings. Each ring could remember a bit of information, while wires threaded through them managed the writing and reading processes. This was known as ferrite memory. It looked quite simple, like beads strung on a wire. Yet, this technology was a breakthrough that allowed the first computers to operate faster and more reliably. Such memory was literally worth its weight in gold, and every cell counted. Today, it's difficult for us to believe that programs ran on rings. But that's how the era of the digital world began. The story of Jack Daniels holds a secret. Its origins are tied to an African-American master. Nathan Nearest Green was born into slavery, and after gaining his freedom, he became a true distillation expert. He taught young Jack Daniel the art of distillation. Today, his name is officially recognized as the first master distiller at the distillery where the legendary brand later emerged. For a long time, this was kept quiet, and only recently has the story come to light. It turns out that the recipe for the famous whiskey owes its existence to a man who has been nearly forgotten. This serves as a reminder that many brands have invisible heroes behind them. The US Supreme Court may seem like a strict and serious place, but few know that there's a basketball court on its roof. It's called the highest court in the land. Employees and even justices play there to relieve stress after sessions. Imagine this. Just moments ago, someone was making a decision that could change the fate of an entire country. And an hour later, they're shooting hoops. This small detail serves as a reminder that even the most influential people are still human, needing rest and joy. The majestic building with its columns conceals an ordinary game above, a symbol that everyone needs a balance between work and life. If you take a close look at Leonardo da Vinci's most famous painting, you'll notice something strange. The Mona Lisa has no eyebrows. Scholars debate whether the artist intended it that way, or if the eyebrows have faded over time. But this small detail makes her smile even more enigmatic. We are used to reading emotions through facial expressions, and the absence of familiar features is disorienting. It's like having a conversation with someone, but part of their words suddenly disappears. Each viewer fills in the gaps in their own way. Perhaps that's why the smile of the Gioconda is so captivating. It communicates with us through the silence of missing details. Scientists have noticed an intriguing habit. When leaving a cave, bats almost always turn left. Why? One theory suggests that this helps them avoid collisions in their large colony. Imagine an intersection without traffic lights, where thousands of cars decide to go only in one direction. It's the same for bats. This common rule of movement makes flying safer. What seems trivial to us is a matter of survival for them. In the dark, order is especially important, and nature has elegantly solved this issue. Left it is. High humidity can make heat almost unbearable for a person. When it's hot and humid outside, the body literally loses its ability to cool down. The thing is, sweat stops evaporating from the skin, meaning the body can't shed excess heat. As a result, we feel weakness, fatigue, and even stress. It's like trying to dry laundry on a foggy day. It stays wet no matter how much time passes. That's why high humidity feels more oppressive than dry heat. The body simply can't cope with natural cooling. Many people consider donkeys to be stubborn and dull animals, but in reality they are much smarter and more emotional than they seem. Donkeys have excellent memories for friends, both humans and other animals, and can hold on to such memories for up to 20 years. They can sense their owner's mood, enjoy attention, feel jealous, and even become sad if ignored. In fact, donkeys have a rich inner world and value friendship just as much as dogs do. Therefore, it's not surprising that in countries where donkeys live alongside people, they are regarded not just as helpers, but almost as full-fledged family members. Those ears and gentle eyes hide much more than we tend to think. Did you know that the largest island nation is Indonesia? This country consists of more than 17,000 islands, but the exact number is still unknown even to the government. Some islands disappear underwater, while others emerge from volcanoes. Indonesia is like a living puzzle that is constantly changing. It is the largest archipelago on the planet, and its geography contributes to its diversity. From tropical beaches to dense jungles and sprawling megacities. Here, literally every area is a separate world with its own culture, language, and traditions. It turns out that we perceive smells not only with our noses. Our skin has receptors that respond to aromatic substances. Scientists conducted experiments by applying certain scents to the skin, and observed that the cells reacted. Moreover, some aromas accelerated wound healing. It seems that our skin acts like an additional sense organ that quietly works in the background. Imagine if we could smell the aroma of coffee not just with our noses, but also with our palms. While this sounds fantastic, research shows that the skin does indeed pick up chemical signals. The chicken is a bird, but there's nothing eagle-like about its flight. The longest flight ever recorded lasted just 13 seconds. For comparison, that's less time than it takes to count to 15. The reason is simple. A chicken's body is heavy and its wing muscles are not developed enough for long flights. However, these short bursts allow chickens to jump over fences or fly up into trees to escape danger. So, a chicken flies just enough to survive. And while its flights may not be impressive, it remains a unique bird in its own right, an ancestor of dinosaurs and a staple of the farmyard. Interestingly, would you guess that there are people who find pleasure simply in the process? These individuals are called autotelics. They don't need money, praise, or fame to engage in what they love. Their motivation comes from within. They can passionately draw, program, play an instrument, or write books, losing track of time. In psychology, autotelics are considered more resilient to stress and often experience a state of flow, where a person is completely absorbed in a task. For them, the outcome is not as important as the journey itself. It's like finding joy not only in the travel but also in the very act of moving forward. In the dense jungles of Honduras, archaeologists used lasers to discover a lost ancient city that had been hidden by nature for centuries. Laser scanning allowed them to see through the tree canopies and uncover the ruins of buildings, plazas, and pyramids. Local legends referred to this place as the White City, or the City of the Gods, attributing mystical powers to it. Researchers found numerous artifacts that confirmed the existence of a rich culture in the area. It turned out that deep within the forest lay an entire civilization forgotten by humanity. This discovery revealed that the jungles could be not just a home for wildlife, but also a vast repository of human history. A group of owls is called a parliament. This sounds very symbolic, as the owl has been regarded as a wise bird since ancient times. In Greek mythology, it accompanied the goddess Athena, and in the Middle Ages, it became a symbol of knowledge and magic. Perhaps that's why people decided that a gathering of owls resembles a meeting of sages discussing important matters. Imagine a forest at night, dozens of owls perched on branches, conversing as if they were discussing an agenda. Of course, they have no politics, but the term has taken root in the language. This is a wonderful example of how human imagination gives animals vivid and memorable names. The International Space Station is not just a laboratory in orbit. It is the most expensive man-made object ever created. Its construction and operation have cost around $150 billion. For comparison, that's nearly 50 times the cost of the Eiffel Tower. The station has become a symbol of cooperation among different countries, with Americans, Russians, Japanese, and Europeans working together on board. Experiments are conducted there that cannot be performed on Earth. And while the amount may seem astronomical, the results are worth it. The ISS has opened the doors to life beyond our planet and represents a step toward future flights to other worlds. Excessively bright light can harm the psyche just as much as noise. We tend to think of light as a sign of comfort and safety, but too much of it can lead to stress, anxiety, and even headaches. Overly lit offices or shopping centers can be just as draining as loud sounds. Scientists refer to this phenomenon as light pollution for the mind. Just as laundry can't dry in fog, the brain can't rest in a constant stream of bright light. Therefore, it's important to regulate lighting. Sometimes soft, dim light is more beneficial than glaring lamps that turn a room into a sterile laboratory. The story of the fire hydrant began with irony. Its first patent was burned. The tale is ironic. An invention created to fight fire itself vanished in flames. The exact design of the first hydrant remains unknown because the documents were destroyed in the fire. Scholars and historians can only speculate about who might have been the inventor. The hydrants we are familiar with on the streets only began to appear in large numbers years later. It creates a true paradox. We use this invention every day, yet the name of the first person who devised this way to save lives is forever lost to the fire. Today, over 1,300,000,000 people know and use English. It is not only an official language in dozens of countries, but also the language of the internet, science, and business. This means that even if you find yourself in an unfamiliar corner of the world, the chances of being able to communicate in English are still high. It has become something like a universal translator between nations. Of course, every language has its own beauty. But English has become the bridge that connects millions of different cultures. One could say it is a true key to the global world. Sometimes reality sounds like fantasy. There is a lamp that has been burning for over 100 years. In the fire station of Livermore, California, a light bulb that was lit in 1901 is still shining. It has outlasted generations, wars, and technological changes, yet it continues to glow. Scientists have examined it and confirmed its authenticity. The reason lies in its carbon filament, which operates at a very low power. Interestingly, back then, lamps were made to last for centuries, while today they barely last a couple of years. This little lamp has become a symbol of a time when things were created not for profit, but for durability. In the Middle Ages, there was an unusual unit of volume, the ton. But it wasn't the familiar weight measurement. It referred to the amount of wine that could fit in a huge barrel. Merchants and winemakers used this method of measurement for trade. Imagine, at a fair, deals were made not in liters or even barrels, but in whole tons of wine. Today, this word is associated with heaviness and mass, but once it was linked to joy and feasting. This detail of history serves as a reminder that many modern terms originated from very practical needs of the past, when wine was almost a currency. In Texas, there's a place that tourists call the Doll Graveyard Town. Once a mining settlement, it is now filled with hundreds of old dolls. They stand on fences, sit in houses, and hang from trees, creating an atmosphere straight out of a mystical film. The locals have turned this into a quirky attraction, offering tours and joking that the dolls rule the town. Of course, it's all in good fun, but it truly looks eerie. Strolling through the streets among the doll residents is not for the faint of heart. Some bridges are capable of producing sounds when people walk on them. For example, in London, there is the Millennium Bridge, which features special plates that create a voice effect. The sounds resemble whispers or soft footsteps, and at night, the bridge transforms into an almost mystical place. Tourists love this effect. As they stroll, they become part of a unique concert. There's a feeling that the city itself has a voice, which it reveals only to attentive listeners. These bridges are an example of how architecture can be not only functional, but also emotional, turning an ordinary crossing over a river into a memorable experience. Today, humanity has explored only 1 to 5% of the ocean. Everything else remains in the dark depths, where humans have rarely ventured. Unknown species, entire ecosystems, and even new sources of energy may be hidden there. Imagine, we know more about the moon than about the ocean floor. This paradox astonishes scientists and fuels the imagination. What lies beneath? Giant creatures, underwater cities, or just darkness? Each new descent of exploration devices reveals a piece of this mystery. It turns out that the ocean is the last great enigma on Earth. Camels are the champions of the desert. They can drink up to 130 liters of water in just 13 minutes. It's like a person draining an entire bathtub in one go. Their bodies are designed to retain moisture. Their blood and tissues are adapted to withstand dehydration, and they hardly sweat at all. Because of this, camels survive where other animals wouldn't last a day. It's no wonder they are called ships of the desert. They carry loads and people across the scorching sands like enormous living water tanks. In Australia, there is Lake Hillier, which changes color from soft pink to deep purple. This effect is created by special algae and minerals. Imagine flying in a plane and seeing a bright pink spot among the greenery of the island, as if a giant spilled strawberry yogurt. Scientists are still debating why the shade is so stable, as even in a bottle the water from the lake retains its color. For tourists, it is one of the most unusual sights. A natural palette that looks like a scene from a sci-fi movie. The sea lily may seem like a flower, but it is actually an ancient animal. The name is misleading. Sea lilies look like flowers on long stems, but they are echinoderms, distant relatives of starfish and sea urchins. They live on the ocean floor and feed by filtering water, capturing tiny crustaceans and protozoa like living nets. Since ancient times, sea lilies have been considered some of the oldest creatures. Their ancestors appeared hundreds of millions of years ago and survived numerous mass extinctions. Interestingly, nature sometimes creates animals that resemble plants, which can confuse even scientists. Sometimes large numbers seem empty and abstract, but here's an interesting example. 1 billion seconds is about 32 years. That's a span of time comparable to a whole human life from birth to maturity. Imagine a baby being born, taking its first steps, going to school, graduating from university. And all of this fits into 1 billion seconds. The word billion sounds like an unimaginably large amount, but in reality, it's just one segment of a human biography. This simple calculation helps us understand how valuable each day is. After all, time doesn't flow in billions, but in small pieces, and it all depends on how we choose to live them. In the tropical forests of Papua New Guinea lives a creature that is easily overlooked, the smallest frog in the world. It measures just 7.7 millimeters, less than a centimeter. Weighing about 1/100th of a gram, it hides among the leaves, appearing as a tiny dot. But don't be fooled into thinking it's quiet. Its voice resembles the buzz of an insect and can be heard from a considerable distance. This little one demonstrates that nature can create not only giants like whales and elephants, but also incredible miniature champions. It's astonishing how life and energy can fit into such a microscopic body. Sharks have existed for over 400 million years, while the first trees appeared only 50 million years later. This means these predators swam in the ocean long before forests rustled on land. Imagine a planet without trees, but with sharks already feeling like the masters of the sea. They have survived mass extinctions, ice ages, and shifts in continents, and they still remain formidable hunters. In this sense, sharks are true dinosaurs of the ocean, proving to be more resilient than even the oldest plants. It may seem like ordinary things, but if you take a closer look, they hold the most unexpected stories. If you enjoyed this journey through the world of curiosities, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There's even more to come that textbooks have kept silent about.